research in the publication, not that I've gone through it
They
entirely.
do, don't they? They have a whole survey.
But they cite
survey,
improvements in well-being, risk-taking, nutrition, obesity, preventing eating disorders, protection from cyberbullying, and so on. If you have family dinners together, they'll make a difference to that.
Family dinners are lovely, and I don't know if we should be encouraging people to have family dinners because we feel like it might save kids from whatever is defined as risky sexual behaviour, but there is something really important about bonding with your family members, and dinners are a wonderful way to do that. It's not easy to put dinner on the table at a time that is appropriate for everybody. But if you can do it and you've got kids, I think it's great.
How great do you think it is, Ian?
Oh, well, I mean, I was surprised by this research, if it is research.
Is it research?
I don't know, because it did seem like a bit of a stretch to say, you're going to eat together with your family and therefore your teens aren't going to be involved in risky sexual behaviour.
Well, I don't think it goes that far.
Well, I think
it just says it helps it.
Right, it helps.
Helps, I guess.
Yeah, but I personally, I grew up having them, and I do value them, and we kind of do try and do that with our family. And I can see that the engagement that you have with your kids is very important, and the chance to just chew over the day and have a little conversation about what it is that happened, that is gold, actually, because it's very easy otherwise just to kind of be ships in the night and all do your own thing. So I can sort of see how you might get a benefit over time, but I don't know.
I was a very, very anxious teenager, and I remember really hating sitting around the table and having dinner with my family. I felt quite anxious doing it. So I can understand when teenagers or young people might not want to do it. But now that I'm older and a mother, now I'm like, that's
You'll insist upon it.
I will insist upon it.
Yes, but looking back, and I'm sure we all know that teen reaction, but do you think it probably did you good in keeping you in touch with the family?
It's such a difficult question. My own self-centeredness is really kind of overriding any memories other than I just did not want to be there. But I think it probably did. But I can think of other things that I did with my mum and dad and things we did as a family that were probably more helpful than necessarily, than having dinner every night. We used to have evening devotions where we'd sit around and do meditation together. And that was really nice. And that probably helped with those things listed in the thing. I think that was more helpful than eating a meal
if you have
together.
a very tense dinner every night that no one wants to be at for the sake of it, surely more beneficial to have good time with your folks, eh?
Yeah, exactly. A games night or watching a movie together.
Family First called for a public health campaign. So we'll mention not to consult the two of you on that particular issue now.
It's time for dinner, yeah.
They're hoping for a full house at the super...
Do you think tax rewards if you have a certain number of dinners a week?
With video evidence.
Yes.
They're hoping for a full house at the Super Rugby final tomorrow night. They didn't get one for the semi-final. Will you be watching?
No. There's too much rugby on television, isn't there? And I don't have a television, so all of those reasons.
No, of course you don't have a television. Silly of me. I thought you might nip next door, though.
Yeah, I might, but no.
New Zealand's Super Rugby crowds are doing okay, but the Australians and the South Africans are letting their sides down, apparently.
Shame on them.
Oh, typical.
Terrible.
I don't have time to ask you any more about rugby.
Oh,
I can see you both think
You're
that's a shame.
not missing out on my opinions there.
Martha and Oka.
Go
very
the Crusaders.
Nice. Yeah, go the Crusaders, naturally. Martha and Oka, nice to see you.
Thank you, good to be here.
And Ian Telfer, nice to hear from you today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening, everybody. We're back on Monday. Go the Crusaders, of course. And Checkpoint is coming right up.
Tō mare, hoa mai, hei kōrero, kei te haere, hei kaupapa, kei te karawhio. Welcome to Checkpoint. Tonight, Australian soldier Terry Harch is safely rescued after 4 harrowing nights trapped on Mount Aspiring. Auckland's power station has cancelled the speaking event for far-right activists Stefan Molyneux and Lawrence Southern. A memo from New Zealand Couriers to their Hawke's Bay drivers. If your uniforms aren't up to scratch, we'll buy replacement items at your expense. We have the memo. A narrow and disputed victory in Zimbabwe. New Zealand's biggest supermarket chains do agree on something. They'll ban single-use plastic bags. Also tonight, the story behind Allbirds, the Kiwi shoe company now backed by Leonardo DiCaprio. And we look forward to the Super Rugby final.
RNZ News at 5. Kia orana, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten aho. The climber who was trapped on Mount Aspiring has been flown to Dunedin Hospital after being rescued from the mountain. The weather finally broke this afternoon, allowing a helicopter to reach the climber and his rescuers. Conan Young has more.
The mood at Wanaka's Landsar base is one of relief after Terry Hatch and his rescuers were lifted off Mount Aspiring shortly after 3:30 this afternoon. The 29-year-old Australian soldier spent 3 nights trapped and alone on the mountain before volunteer rescuers finally reached him about 5 o'clock yesterday evening. He was reportedly in good spirits despite his ordeal, but weather meant he had to stay up there for almost another 24 hours. A search and rescue spokesperson, Phil Melchior, says rescuers are pleased with the outcome, which could have been so much worse considering the circumstances. Mr Hatch will be treated in Dunedin for frost nip. This is Conan Young.
Far-right Canadian duo Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux won't be making a public appearance in New Zealand. Their event, planned for Auckland tonight, has been cancelled at the last minute and ticket holders will be getting a refund. Sarah Robson has more.
The event organisers updated their website this afternoon to say that due to circumstances beyond their control, tonight's event is off. That announcement came not long after the owners of the venue where the event was due to be held, the power station, cancelled the booking. One of the venue's owners, Peter Campbell, says he made the decision to call it off because of the disruption the event would cause. He says he had initially thought Molyneux and Southern should be able to speak so that people could judge what they were saying for themselves. A rally against racism will still go ahead in Aotea Square this evening. Ko Sarah Robson, aho.
The opposition movement for Democratic Change Alliance in Zimbabwe says it rejects the outcome of the presidential election and will launch a legal challenge to overturn the result. The incumbent, Emmerson Mnangagwa, narrowly avoided a runoff vote against the opposition leader Nelson Chamisa by taking just over half of the votes cast. The BBC's Andrew Harding is in the Zimbabwe capital, Harare.
The loser, Mr Chamisa, has already made it clear that he believes he's been cheated of victory. His supporters are fired up and furious and no doubt preparing to hold large demonstrations. The government is under international pressure to show restraint following the violent crackdown and resulting deaths early this week. But it has already begun arresting opposition activists and is unlikely to take a soft line in the days ahead. Many Zimbabweans will be relieved that this election is over, however flawed it may have been. It does mark a significant improvement on past polls.
Andrew Harding with that report. An Auckland multimillionaire who paid parents to sexually abuse their children in online videos told the police he was the one being exploited. Martin Henry Laws today pleaded guilty to dealing with a person under 18 for sexual exploitation and importing and possessing child sex images. Edward Gay was at the High Court in Auckland.
Laws watched the online videos from the comfort of his North Shore home, typing directions on what he wanted to see happen. One of the people shared videos and photos of her own children, aged 3, 4 and 7, as well as her 13-year-old neighbour. Over a year, Laws exchanged 6,000 online messages with her. He later told the police he was helping the people supplying the photos and videos as they lived in poverty. He said it was him who was being exploited by the people in the Philippines. Laws is on bail and will be sentenced next month. I Tamaki Makoto, ko Edward Gaiaho.
A soldier who suffered a gunshot wound to the shoulder during a field training exercise at Tekapo last night is in Christchurch Hospital awaiting surgery. The Defence Force says the private, who's based at Burnham Military Camp, was taking part in a live-firing exercise at the Tekapo Military Training Facility when he was shot. He was treated by Army medics at the scene before being transported to Fairlie by a Defence Force ambulance, from where he was airlifted to Christchurch Hospital. He's in a stable condition. All power has been restored in Wellington after a mass outage caused headaches for businesses in the central city and western suburbs. The power went out, affecting over 12,000 customers, but was restored just after 3:15. The chief executive of Transpower, Alison Andrews, says the outage was caused by a fault in a piece of equipment.
We've worked out that there was a section that joined two parts of the supply into Wilton that had a fault. So at about 1:30 we got crews up to Wilton who identified the fault, and it was about parts that connect two sections of the power system.
Alison Andrews says they'll be looking at how to prevent this happening again. It's 5:05. The Crusaders coach Scott Robertson says they're wary of the threat posed by a strong Lions forward pack ahead of tomorrow night's Super Rugby final in Christchurch. While 7 of the Crusaders' 8 starting forwards have played for the All Blacks, their South African opposition also have plenty of strength up front. Loose forward Quagga Smith and hooker Malcolm Marks are 2 of the stars of the Lions pack, and Robertson says both are dangerous.
There is a lot of strengths in that team, and those 2, Quagga, exceptional player, known from the Barbarians, and he's a quality man, and obviously Malcolm Marks is a premier player in the world of World Rugby, so quality players, and they lead that team really well, and we're well aware of it, and we respect them with our preparation.
Scott Robertson. Meanwhile, the New South Wales Waratahs have re-signed coach, former All Black Daryl Gibson, to a 1-year contract extension. The New Zealand golfer Lydia Ko will try and edge closer towards the lead when she gets underway in the second round of the British Open tonight. Ko is 3 shots behind leader Minjee Lee of Australia in a tie for 8th after day 1 at the Royal Lytham and St Anne's course in Lancashire, England. And the Warriors outside back Jared Beale believes coach Stephen Kearney hit the bullseye when he called his players soft following their latest heavy NRL loss. The 8th placed Warriors, who play the 4th placed Dragons in Sydney tomorrow, heaped pressure on themselves with a spiritless 36-12 loss to the Titans on the Gold Coast last weekend. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, the Phoenix Foundation is live at the Festival Club. We're getting down and dirty for the weekend. Country Life looks at agriculture and schools. And because Columbus headed west on this day in 1492, we have a Sonic Tonic dedicated to discovery.
And on Lately at 10, we feature Kiwi Rules. The famous and the infamous introduce us to a new New Zealand artist. We'll have an eye not only on music, but books, people and politics, keeping you up to date with the world at the other end of the day and bringing you breaking news as it happens. That's Lately with Karen Hay, on Nights with Brian Crump on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Whanganui, also Coromandel and Taupō. Long fine spells and isolated showers, high cloud increasing tomorrow. Bay of Plenty rain with some heavy falls east of Whakatane, isolated showers elsewhere, but rain spreading throughout tomorrow afternoon. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, occasional rain with heavy falls about northern Gisborne. Taihape and Manawatu to Wellington, long fine spells with isolated showers clearing this evening, however clouding over tomorrow with scattered rain developing. Marlborough and Nelson, mainly fine but a few showers about Golden Bay, scattered rain developing later tomorrow in Marlborough. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, fine in Fiordland, showers about Bulla and Westland, clearing from the south tonight and becoming fine. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, areas of low cloud or fog with afternoon fine breaks inland. Patchy rain about eastern parts of Otago and Southland. And the Chatham Islands cloudy with occasional rain. It's 8 minutes past 5 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina Batten, and thank you everyone for being with us. We're going to start with this pretty extraordinary story of Terry Hart. She spent 3 nights trapped and alone on Mount Aspiring, hadn't been heard of for a couple of nights. Don't know about you, when I heard about him on Morning Report yesterday, I really did fear for the worst. But tonight he's on his way to Dunedin Hospital after a break in the weather finally allowed a helicopter to reach the Australian climber. He activated his emergency beacon on Tuesday, but couldn't be reached by rescuers until last night due to bad weather. Our Otago Southern reporter Timothy Brown is in Wanaka and joins us now via live view. Hi Timothy, what's the latest?
Good evening, John. Well, the latest is following a break in weather about 3:30 this afternoon, they were able to get the helicopters up to Terry Hart, get him loaded out and get him on his way to Dunedin where he'll be treated for his injuries. Now, I've spoken to some of the rescuers who were up there with him overnight last night, and they're not paramedics, so they can't really diagnose what the extent of his injuries are, but he certainly was in a lot of pain overnight, very cold, but very pleased to see them.
Wow, quite an extraordinary story. He's an Australian soldier, right? Lieutenant Terry Hart, and it sounds like he knew what to do. Is that what the rescuers have, is that what you've heard, Tim?
That is right. From all accounts, an experienced climber, knew exactly what to do. He's done all the right things. He had a beacon on him. He was prepared. Unfortunately, You know, the snow was heavy up on the glacier and the weather turned against him. He did all that he could. He dug what has been described by the lead rescuer as a bivvy. It's been reported elsewhere as an ice cave. He said it's far too small to describe as an ice cave, a very small bivvy, and hung out there for 3 nights awaiting for any signs of help to come.
I can hear some joyful beeping all around you. This really is quite a happy occasion, because I think people were pretty despairing when, after that emergency beacon, there'd been nothing for so long. What were the weather conditions like on the mountain, Tim?
Apparently very, very difficult to see anything, very cold, a lot of heavy snow. It was very tough going for the rescuers who are experienced in this work. That was the problem with getting the chopper up there. It was just waiting for that break, waiting for the sun to break through, and looking down Lake Wanaka this afternoon, you could see it was happening. I got a text shortly after saying, got him, and there was nothing but jubilation up here. There's a lot of hand clapping going on. There's a lot of smiles amongst rescuers. They're very pleased that they know this could have been much worse.
Got him. That's a good phrase. Tim Brown, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Timothy joining us live via LiveView. Later in the program, we'll hear from our reporter Conan Young, who's been speaking to some of the rescue team. That will be after 6. It's 11 minutes past 5. New Zealand Courier drivers in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand Courier's drivers in Hawke's Bay, have been told if the uniforms aren't up to scratch, the company will buy replacement items at the driver's cost. A memo to drivers from a manager at the Hawke's Bay depot has been given to Checkpoint, and it explicitly tells the drivers if their uniforms aren't satisfactory, the company will unilaterally replace them, quote, at your cost. On Monday, we revealed First Union is to take legal action to determine whether courier drivers are independent contractors or employees under Section 6 of the Employment Relations Act. The measure, as we revealed on Checkpoint last week, is the real nature of the relationship between parties. And Graham Colgan, a former Chief Judge of the Employment Court, told us it's not what the contract says that matters. It's how the contractor is actually required to work.
The label is meaningless as far as the law is concerned. The law is concerned with substance rather than form.
That's Graham Colgan. Now, since we've run those stories, we've heard from more and more courier drivers telling us their working relationship with the companies they're delivering for. The recurring themes are as follows. They buy their own vehicles, but can't use them to drive for anyone else. They're called independent, but are required to work specified hours. And they're required to buy and wear the company uniform. When we saw the internal memo saying the company is going to buy replacement items at the driver's expense, we tried again to talk to Freightways about that. They declined again. But we went to their head office anyway. We are in Penrose, Auckland, and the noise you just heard, if you're listening on the radio, was a New Zealand Courier's van just driving past us, and our cameraman Nick, I think, managed, it was moving pretty fast, to get a shot of what's written on the side of the door, and it says independent contractor. Now, that's been the centre of our coverage. Here goes a Castle Parcels truck, which is another branch of the Freightways family. It's been at the centre of our coverage here on Checkpoint for the past 2 or 3 weeks. What is an independent contractor? Well, we know what they are really. So New Zealand Couriers is the firm that we've been looking at most of all. It is owned by the parent Freightways, and we are at the head office, and Freightways House is just over to the other side of us here. Most recent profit, $31.4 million. So it's a good business model. They employ drivers, mostly owner-operators. We understand the independent model, and a very large post-haste truck is just about to go past me, getting a cheery way from the driver. Are you an independent contractor, brother?
No, I'm not.
Are you on staff?
Yes.
So the truckies are on staff?
Some of them.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much. So he's on staff, he's an employee, so he gets to come to work, not buy his truck, presumably get sick leave, annual holidays and all that kind of stuff. But the independent contractors, and that is the overwhelming majority of the courier fleet, buy their vans, buy their uniforms, buy their scanners, don't get annual leave and don't get sick pay. What they do get is the opportunity to deliver packages for New Zealand Couriers. For some of them it can be quite lucrative, for others once they've paid their costs they are earning less than the minimum wage. But what we're able to identify tonight on Checkpoint also is there are some pretty stringent conditions attached, like the uniform. They buy their uniform and it is strongly policed. The Hawke's Bay branch has sent out a memo saying, and I quote, "You are part of New Zealand's premier courier company. So they're independent contractors who are part of New Zealand's independent courier company. And part of what ensures we stay that way is our image. So they're being told to look better. They're being told their uniforms aren't up to scratch. But they're also being told, and I quote, effective from Monday the 13th of August, at our discretion, which means the company has unilateral power to act, a sub-60 van just going past with independent contractor written on the side, we will automatically order at your cost the correct uniform items if you're wearing incorrect uniform items. So independent contractors are being told in a memo from New Zealand Couriers owned by Freightways that if their uniforms aren't up to scratch, the company will unilaterally order at their cost new uniforms. Is that independence, or is that starting to sound like a master-servant relationship? And at what stage does a master-servant relationship that is that capable of unilateralism become an employer-employee relationship? At what stage aren't these guys independent at all? Security Express van just giving us a nice beep as he goes by. Well, we wanted to ask the Freightways bosses that's why we've come here today. But they have consistently refused to talk to us. They have consistently not even responded to our approaches. These are big questions, we think, and we would love to talk to someone from Freightways about all of this. The offer remains open to Freightways, the offer remains open to PBT and all the courier companies who employ contract drivers. New Zealand Post, who are an SOE who have done that, are the only people to have spoken to us on the record about this issue so far. 5:16. Far-right duo Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux won't be speaking in New Zealand after their venue cancelled at the 11th hour. Their event in Auckland tonight has been scrapped and ticket holders have been told they'll be getting a refund. A peaceful anti-racism rally in Aotearoa Square, which was organised in response to the pair's trip to New Zealand, is still going ahead. We understand our reporter Sarah Robson has more.
The organisers of tonight's speaking event had been trying to keep the venue secret for as long as possible. An email went out to ticket holders this afternoon telling them it would be held at the popular music venue, the Power Station. But there was an immediate backlash. Local musicians and gig goers expressed their dismay on Twitter, and the Power Station's Facebook page was inundated with one-star reviews. In Melbourne, there were noisy protests when Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux spoke. The Power Station's owner, Peter Campbell, says he decided to cancel the event because of the disruption it would cause. He declined to be interviewed on tape, but says he had initially thought the pair should be able to speak so people could judge for themselves. Peter Campbell says he will refund the direct costs incurred by the pair because of the cancellation, but did not think they would be great. Ticket holders were emailed again this afternoon saying that due to unforeseen circumstances, the event had been cancelled, but they would be refunded. Writer and international relations student Luke Kinsella heard the pair speak in Melbourne. He says the cancellation will add fuel to the fire of their followers.
Oh, it's massive. Like, anyone that denies that this is not something that we really have to deal with is kidding themselves. This is something that you can be seen across the West.
A rally against racism, a counterpoint to the Canadian pair's visit, is still going ahead in Aotearoa Square. One of the organisers, Senna Brown-Davis, says they're celebrating the cancellation of the event.
We're like a diverse community based on respect to the tangata whenua. We have many diverse cultures that have come to our lands to make a better life for themselves that will contribute to the richness of our community. That's a victory for that.
There's a moderate police presence in Aotearoa Square ahead of the protest. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi ko Sarah Robson, aho.
5:19. Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe's governing ZANU-PF party has been declared the victor in the country's presidential election. He won just under 51% of the vote against 44% for opposition leader Nelson Chamisa. His MDC alliance has rejected the results and says they will be challenged in court. The BBC's Africa editor, Fergal Keane, is in Harare.
After a wait in which the country was plunged into crisis, at last, the moment of decision.
The votes received by Mnangagwa Emerson Dambudzo of ZANU-PF party are more than half the number of votes cast in the presidential election. Therefore, Mnangagwa Emerson Dambudzo of ZANU-PF party is therefore duly declared elected President of the Republic of Zimbabwe with effect from the 3rd of August 2018.
The newly elected president is the man who overthrew Robert Mugabe last November.
Today, we are witnessing the beginning of a new unfolding democracy.
His victory is the culmination of 50 years of activism and political manoeuvring for the man nicknamed the Crocodile, patient and ruthless. Do those characteristics describe you, do you think?
I am as soft as wool. I am as a very soft person in life, my brother.
But hours before tonight's announcement, the man he has defeated claimed that Mr. Mnangagwa had stolen the election.
People know what they voted for. And they definitely did not vote for Idi Mnangagwa in this election. And people know that.
The victory declaration won't end the polarisation that's deepened so dramatically in the last days. The normally bustling centre of Harare, soldiers who'd opened fire on crowds yesterday warned people to go home. It's an apprehensive place. It's a city whose streets don't belong to the people today, but to men with batons and guns. We came across a standoff with police at opposition headquarters. They'd arrested several people, but they wanted more who were still in the building. Have the police entered the building?
No, we stopped them from doing that. We stopped them from doing that.
So there's an army chopper coming overhead?
Oh, yeah.
Finally, a warrant and more arrests. It was a very different scene among ZANU supporters in rural Mazoe, confidently expecting the victory of Idi Mnangagwa.
It has been our liberation party since 1980, so we were born in ZANU-PF and I'm in ZANU-PF and I will support it to the end.
The president has his victory and is backed by the might of the state, but he will rule a deeply divided nation.
Fergal Keane with that report. It's 22 minutes past 5. A warning just before we move on to some of our listeners. The following story is about child sex abuse and may not be suitable for everyone. A multi-millionaire businessman told police he was helping poor Filipino parents when he paid them to sexually abuse their children in online videos. Martin Henry Laws, the former chair of the Takapuna Community Board in Auckland, watched the movies from the comfort of his home on the city's North Shore. Today he admitted charges of dealing with a person under 18 for sexual exploitation and importing and possessing child sex images when he appeared at the High Court in Auckland. Edward Gay has been in court and he told me that Laws spent more than $100,000 on photos and online sex videos.
That's between 2008 and 2017. And he'd go on to tell police that the money was nothing to him. He was a multi-millionaire. But most of this money was spent on adult live stream videos. But evidence gathered by the police shows Laws also asked for and paid for videos involving children. During the live stream videos, Laws was able to direct what he wanted the children to do by actually typing instructions. Some of the messages are included in court documents. They're explicit, and as a result, we won't broadcast them. But one of the people Laws was in contact with in this time shared photos and videos of her own children aged 3, 4, 7, and as well as her 13-year-old neighbour. And over a year, Laws actually exchanged 6,000 online messages with this person.
And then he tried to cover his tracks, right?
He did. He deleted messages. He also used aliases to create email and chat accounts. He even used his wife's maiden name in one attempt to hide his true identity. He was arrested after Filipino authorities arrested 5 adults in the Philippines, and these 5 adults were running this live streaming child sex ring. 12 young people were rescued. They were aged between 7 and 19. 11 of those were under 15. Laws had made 36 payments to accounts held in the names of 3 of the 5 child sex ring leaders. That totaled over $2,400. The police seized 3 of his computers at his North Shore home belonging to Laws, and a search of those computers found objectionable photos of children being sexually abused. The police also uncovered messages between Laws and members of the child sex ring, where there was talk about photos. Court documents also show the police found messages between Laws and an adult and they talk about exchanging a sex video of a girl in exchange for money for school books, apparently.
So it started in the Philippines and then they traced it back to Laws in Auckland. The police say this kind of activity, this live streaming, is becoming a growing problem, Eddie.
That's right, yeah, and particularly in poor Southeast Asian countries where there's this high level of poverty and a low level of child protection. The Philippines is one of the worst. Children being abused in videos receive as little as $3 each. And in an interview with the police, Laws said he was helping the people supplying the photos and videos as they were living in poverty, and he was giving them money. He went on to say that he was being exploited by the people in the Philippines as opposed to the children that he paid to watch being sexually exploited. Laws's name will be added to the Child Sex Offenders Register. He's on bail at the moment in his $1.2 million North Shore home until he's sentenced next month.
Edward Gay, our court reporter here in Auckland. A former bus driver for Ruapehu Alpine Lifts says shuttles and drivers are under too much stress. And Saturday's fatal crash was an accident waiting to happen. Alan Henderson says the sheer numbers of skiers needing transport up and down the mountain is putting too much pressure on bus and shuttle services. And he told our producer Bridget Burke he wants bigger car parks and shuttles banned from the mountain altogether.
What did you make of the accident on Saturday once you knew the details?
My opinion, and I've said right from the beginning, it was an accident waiting to happen.
Bus driver Alan Henderson speaking about Saturday's fatal bus crash on Mount Ruapehu, which killed 11-year-old Auckland schoolgirl Hannah Francis and left 18 other skiers injured. Ruapehu Alpine Lifts runs the main shuttle service up and down the mountain. Alan says he was one of the company's first contract drivers.
I've probably done more kilometres on the mountain than anyone else.
Alan drove the whakapapa side of the mountain, but back then the buses transported staff, not skiers. These days he works as a driver for National Park backpackers.
I went down to Aokuni during the school holidays on the one weekend to register my van, and I couldn't believe the amount of people standing in Aokuni, hundreds of people wanting transport up the mountain on their cheap shuttles. And you get those people up, you got to work your buses hard to get them up there, and when you come down in the afternoon, all everyone wants to do is get back down again, and it's all downhill. I think it's about 18 kilometres down Timaru side. It's hard on buses, it's hard on drivers. They should never have started the shuttle service up.
Are you saying this because you're commercially motivated to eliminate them as competition?
No, not at all. It's common sense. You know, you're driving on a mountain, it's totally different driving than your buses. And you're putting a lot of pressure on brakes when you've got to move that amount of people. Okay, you get them up in the morning, then you've got to get, as I said, you've got to get them down in the afternoon. And skiers are hard people to deal with. They're quite demanding, and they should have left it as it was. But we used to cart out of whakapapa. No, I don't care if I don't drive up the mountains anymore. I've had enough of the place, and this has really turned me right off it. You know, that girl shouldn't have died.
Yesterday, RAL announced it would voluntarily suspend its bus fleet after an urgent audit carried out by the New Zealand Transport Agency. But Alan Henderson says the problem isn't with the Mitsubishi Fuso buses. Can you tell me what you used to drive, what vehicle you used to drive up there?
Fusos.
Why do you laugh?
Well, there's been a lot in the media about Fusos. There's nothing wrong with Fuso buses. They've been putting them down. The reason you use Fusos, and we use Fusos, Enos, and Nissans, the rear engine buses, and you need it for traction on ice and snow. You need that weight if you're empty, because we use chains a lot in the snow and ice. And you need that weight over your rear wheels. And the Fusos are a good bus. There's nothing wrong with them. They just have to be maintained.
And do you think that they weren't maintained properly?
I wouldn't. No, I can't say that. I mean, you can have something can snap under pressure anytime.
RAL has appealed for passengers on board the bus on Saturday to come forward. Its CEO, Ross Copeland, has refused repeated requests for an interview with Checkpoint. The police have also declined to be interviewed while their investigation is underway. The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment told Checkpoint today that despite the investigation, it will proceed with plans to loan RAL $10 million towards the construction of a gondola project across the Whakapapa ski field. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.
Was that some distortion in the sting? Unbelievable. It's like the Jesus and Mary chain had joined in. Anyway, thank you very much. It was quite exciting on a Friday night. Coming up, Apple becomes the first $1 trillion publicly listed US company. New Zealand's biggest supermarkets all agree on something. They're banning single-use plastic bags. The story behind Allbirds, it's a wonderful story. Katrina's just saying how comfy the shoes are too.
Oh, the best, so comfortable.
Well,
they're so comfortable, I bought my dad a pair.
And he likes them?
Loves them.
Well, so does Leonardo DiCaprio. He's backing them. So does Jacinda Ardern. She was wearing them yesterday when I interviewed her. And so we're going to celebrate this little success story. And we look ahead to tomorrow's Super Rugby final. Madison is next with business news. But before it all, Katrina Batten.
The climber trapped on Mount Aspiring has been flown to Dunedin Hospital tonight after being rescued from the mountain. A helicopter managed to reach Terry Harch and his rescuers during a break in the weather late this afternoon. The 29-year-old Australian soldier spent 3 nights trapped and alone on the mountain before an alpine crew finally reached him last night. A millionaire and former community board member has admitted paying poor Filipino parents to sexually abuse their children in live online videos while he watched. Martin Laws admitted a number of charges relating to sexual exploitation and child sex images when he appeared in the High Court in Auckland today. The former head of Northcote Town Centre Incorporated and the Takapuna Community Board was charged after a network of child abuse was uncovered in the Philippines. The Auckland event scheduled for tonight involving far-right speakers Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux has been cancelled. The event organisers say that due to circumstances beyond their control, tonight's event at the power station is off. Earlier this afternoon, the owner of the venue cancelled the booking because he feared disruption from people opposed to the pair. The opposition Movement for Democratic Change Alliance in Zimbabwe says it rejects the outcome of the presidential election and will legally challenge the result. The incumbent, Emmerson Mnangagwa, narrowly avoided a runoff vote against the opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, by taking just over half of the votes cast. Mr Chamisa has insisted he won the presidential poll. Reports from Zimbabwe say opposition activists are being arrested. A soldier who suffered a gunshot wound to the shoulder during a field training exercise at Tekapo last night is in Christchurch Hospital awaiting surgery. The Defence Force says the private from Burnham Military Camp was taking part in a live firing exercise at the Tekapo Military Training Facility when he was shot. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6 o'clock. I'm 27 minutes.
Thank you very much, KB. If you're stuck in traffic in one of our main centres tonight and thinking this is awful, we have the solution for you before 6 o'clock. One word, Timaru. Stay with us. Look, we will in about 20 minutes, Madison. Madison Reedy is beside me in the studio. Homewares retailer Briscoe's having a good year. What are they doing? Because if we listen to businesses telling us confidence is down, old Roger
particularly retailers,
remember? Yeah, exactly. Roger seems to just make his own confidence, doesn't he?
Retailers are in a bit of a tough time at the moment. Online shopping obviously has ruined them ever so slightly. The ones that haven't been so fast to adapt to the online movement, where consumers are shopping more and more now. They have struggled, and we obviously have seen some closures as well. But it's not all too bad. We have had some large international retailers, the likes of Zara and H&M, arrive in New Zealand, and H&M's actually building a huge second store in Britomart, downtown Auckland too. But Briscoe's, they've had a really good year so far. They're actually making more money in this year than they were last, which seems crazy. And more of that revenue is coming from online, so they seem to have been a retailer that has adapted in time and doing well from it. So their half-year revenue that they released today was $292 million. That's up 4% on their half-year result last year.
Holy moly, it's a lot of revenue, isn't it? Half year.
And so Briscoe's doesn't just own Briscoe's the retailer as well. Briscoe's Group also owns Living and Giving and Rebel Sport.
Yep.
And it also has a 20% stake in Kathmandu as well. And the reason that, a lot of people say it is doing well is because it has Rod Duke at its helm. Now, Rod Duke has been the managing director of Briscoe since 1988. That is 7 years longer than I have been on Earth. The man is a retail guru.
And he is. He has a nose for the market that is extraordinary.
And absolutely for consumer trends as well. And with retail, it always really comes down to, particularly in stores, your stock levels, especially with a homeware retailer, how many heaters you have one year, or electric blankets, or how many maybe Crusaders jerseys one year if they do well. I mean, you don't know. It always really is up in the air and a gamble as to how much you buy to sell that following year. You're always working a year ahead. But there really is no formula for it, but Rod Duke seems to have one in that little mastermind of his. So he's told me previously last year on the phone that it's always a guessing game, but it seems like he has a real knack for it and it's paying off.
Last night we talked about A2 and Fonterra. Tonight, Madison, A2 Milk has cut another deal.
They have. So they have bought an extra 8% of Synlait milk. Synlait milk creates baby formula, infant formula, and they create that for A2. So they've been in a partnership for a while now, and Synlait is based in Canterbury. So now A2's stake in Synlait is 17.4%. So they bought an extra 8% to add on to their 9-point-something rather percent. And they bought that extra equity from a Japanese investment firm called Mitsui, and they paid $161 million for that. Wow. And we spoke last night about their share price and, them being a hot stock at the moment, so they seem to be spending that money somewhere.
What did the markets do today?
The markets, we closed up 0.2% or 15 points to 8865. The New Zealand dollar's buying at 67.3 US cents, 91.3 Australian and 51.7 British pounds. And also Synlait shares went up 2.8% today, so the market seemed to like A2's news, yeah.
Madison, really, thanks so much for your work this week. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Madison mentioned the Crusaders and Canterbury a couple of times in there. We'll preview the big Super Rugby final later in the program. It's the first $1 trillion publicly listed US company and a firm that now has market value more than 5 times the value of the New Zealand economy. Goodness gracious. We're talking, of course, about Apple and its decade-long rise fuelled by its ubiquitous iPhone. Fred Katayama reports.
It's official. Apple has become the first $1 trillion publicly listed U.S. company. Started in Steve Jobs' garage in 1976, Apple evolved from selling Mac personal computers to launching the iPhone in 2007 and becoming an architect of the mobile revolution. Along the way, it developed a cult-like following. Its stock has surged more than 50,000% since its 1980 initial public offering. Now, Apple's stock market value is greater than those of ExxonMobil, Procter & Gamble, and AT&T combined. The iPhone maker has also pushed its revenue beyond the economic outputs of Portugal, New Zealand, and other countries. Henyon & Walsh Asset Management Chief Investment Officer Kevin Mon.
Unbelievable. I think, Apple is a multi-pronged company from the standpoint that they're also involved in e-commerce. They do play a role in the e-commerce ecosystem. They're clearly part of the technology revolution, and they continue to stay at the forefront of what customers want, not even if they're aware of what they actually need, but they still want.
But global demand for smartphones is losing steam. Analysts say Apple could lose its lead to the likes of Alphabet or Amazon if it doesn't find a major new product or service soon.
Fred Katayama, the reporter there. In 5 months' time, you won't be able to get a single-use plastic bag at a big supermarket in New Zealand. That means New World, Pack and Save, Foursquare, Countdown, plus some of the smaller chains, all. If you forget a reusable bag, you'll have to use your hands or get a box. Foodstuffs was today. Also, they do sell bags, don't they? Foodstuffs was today, canvas bags and stuff. Foodstuffs was today first off the rank to set a date for a full ban, January 1st next year. And that rank includes the government. After 9 months in power, the government is still considering whether it will join other countries and now our supermarkets in banning single-use plastic bags, which means our supermarkets, whose main motivator generally is to make money, are now in charge of driving environmental change in this respect. Here's Zach Fleming with more.
We're very excited to announce that as of January 1, in all of our retail offers, we will no longer be providing plastic bags at our checkout.
Foodstuffs doing what the government won't, setting a date to cut out single-use plastic bags.
What we want people to do is bring reusable bags, and that way they can save the planet and also save us time and effort.
Managing Director Steve Anderson says it'll cost the business around the same. He says the commitment to removal is environmental. Countdown is the same. In 2 weeks, a third of its stores will be single-use plastic bag free. You'll still be able to get plastic bags, but they'll be reusable ones for 15 cents. And while its GM of Corporate Affairs, Kerry Hannafin, says it hasn't set a final date like Foodstuffs,
what we do know is that we'll be finished by the end of the year.
So 2019, no single-use plastic bags in major supermarkets. And for both chains, it's actually not that easy. The logistics are complex, but both have identified it's what their customers want. And your customers are New Zealand voters, right? And so you guys are kind of in this weird space now where you're driving social change, driving environmental change, which usually would be the domain of the government to identify this is what our constituents want, so this is what we're going to do. Is it a weird place for you guys to be in at the moment?
I think I'm really proud that we're in this place, that we as a business, because we're so big and we're across New Zealand, we sort of recognise that we've got not only the responsibility but the opportunity to do things at scale, to do good things at scale. We've been working with the government, in 2017 to see whether there'd be government action, and when we realised that wasn't going to come, we decided we'd go alone and we'd do it without, regulation.
Ditto for foodstuffs.
The key thing is that we cannot drive anything that consumers don't want to happen.
So where is the government at? Associate Environment Minister Eugenie Sage wasn't available for an interview today, but she said in a statement that single-use plastic bags are a problem and bold, decisive action is needed. Yet, after 9 months in power, she is, quote, not yet in a position to announce what we're intending to do. Across the ditch, there's been drama this week, with Aussie supermarket chain Coles bowing to customer pressure and reversing its plastic bag ban.
Supermarket giant Coles announced it will give its customers more time to transition.
It's bad enough that Woolworths and Coles want to make life tougher for their customers by banning free plastic shopping bags. What a crazy business model.
Conservative commentator Andrew Bolt even arguing that reusing plastic bags could be unhygienic.
But both Foodstuffs and Countdown say that won't happen here.
We might get some negative from some individuals, but I believe that it'll be absolutely manageable.
It's a almost utilitarian approach, the greater good outweighs the potential negative from a select few.
You can never please everybody all the time.
It's a pretty easy thing to do to make a real big difference, and I think I think we're different to Australia. I think the dynamics are different. Kiwis really care about the environment, and to just remember the why we're doing this for our kids, for our future, for our beautiful country.
Minister Sage has previously said it could be several months before she'll announce whether the government will formally ban single-use plastic bags. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
It's coming up to 17 minutes to 6. South Africa's Lions will attempt what many consider mission impossible tomorrow night, beating the defending champions, the Crusaders, on their home turf to win the Super Rugby title. Yes, it is the end of the Super season tomorrow night. No team has been more dominant in the 22 years of the competition than the Crusaders, who've won 8 titles out of 22, made 12 finals, claimed 17 top 4 finishes. Not bad for a franchise that finished last in the very first season. So can they be beaten? Our rugby reporter Joe Porter takes a look at the Lions' chances.
Well, the arms are raised in triumph already as Richie Mo'unga and Scott Robertson start the celebrations for the Crusaders.
The Crusaders beat the Lions in Johannesburg to win last year's title. This time they're at home in their Christchurch fortress, where they've never lost a knockout match. Their coach Scott Robertson is confident of maintaining that record, though he's wary of a Lions' pride still stinging from last season's disappointment.
It's got a feel of last year. We were well and truly aware when we went up there that they were stacked favourites and we got the job done. So we're ready for everything and we understand what passion they'll bring and Hurt's a great driver and a motivator.
Though Robertson has every right to be more bullish, they're defending champions and outrageously short favourites to win an unprecedented 9th title. Former All Blacks prop Case Muse played against champion Crusaders teams many times and says their strength has always been easy to see but difficult to overcome.
They were always
always going to be strong up front, and we had to be able to compete with them and be able to give our backline a platform to play off, and that's where I think a lot of teams this year have struggled with the Crusaders, because they have such a dominant pack that they put teams under pressure on the opposition's ball. So instead of running onto the ball, their backline, they're actually getting the ball flat or going backwards.
And Muse always knew his close friend and former All Black teammate Robertson would evolve into a top coach, with the man they call Razor leading the Crusaders to 2 finals and maybe 2 titles in his first 2 years in charge. The All Blacks coach Steve Hansen says Robertson is one of a kind.
He's his own man, Razor. He's different. I mean, last week he was wandering around the stadium waving to everybody, and not many people would do that, but that's the unique thing about him. He is unique, and he is what he is, and he brings an infectious excitement.
Though Hansen, a proud Cantabrian, has an All Black warning for one-eyed Crusaders fans.
You've only got to think back to 2007 in France, Cardiff, and people didn't think that France could win, and we got smacked quite badly. So whilst you would expect the Crusaders to go out favourite, and rightly so because they've played some wonderful football, there's no guarantee that they're going to win it.
The Crusaders of 2000 headed to Canberra for the final against the Brumbies. They were underdogs but upset the hosts to come out on top. Former Crusader and All Black Mark Robinson played in that game, and he says the Lions do have a chance this weekend if they believe they can win.
It snowed leading into the game, pretty tricky conditions, and we had, I think it was 25% of the ball, and I guess found a way to win. So where there's a collective will and, a real resolve within a group of people, then that's really powerful. It can build to a level where you feel like you can take on almost any challenge.
However, that might be hard for the Lions. The Hurricanes coach Chris Boyd reckons the Crusaders are 20 points better than any other team, and the Lions coach Schweiss de Bruin agrees. He's praying for divine intervention tomorrow night.
I believe in miracles, and this team has proven it, so anything can happen. But the fact that they're the favourites, they're a very good team. But it's still 80 minutes between 4 white lines.
The hosts are on a 14-match winning streak and are yet to lose a playoff on home soil, so the Lions will no doubt need the rugby gods on their side at the Crusaders Cathedral. Mō te hōtaka o te ahipo nei, ko Joe Porter aho.
It's an incredible fact, isn't it? 22 years and they've never lost a playoff on home soil. That's semi-finals and finals, and quarterfinals. Quite remarkable. We go now to Timaru, south of Christchurch, which is exactly what Timaru is hoping we'll do. The east coast city, urban population roughly 30,000, halfway between Christchurch and Dunedin, 2 hours driving, not an hour. South of Christchurch, as you'll hear me stupidly assert during this interview, is on a recruitment drive to get Aucklanders to fix its self-declared worker shorter crisis. And it's doing so by erecting promotional billboards in Auckland and mounting a Facebook campaign. We want you, Aucklanders, in Timaru. I spoke to Nigel Davenport, the Chief Executive of Aoraki Development, earlier, and asked him, in fact, yesterday, and asked him what jobs are on offer there at the moment.
Hey, look, at the end of the day, John, we've got a hugely diverse industry base in Timaru. We're not a dairy town or a farming town. We've got some of the biggest international and national food processors in our region. Your Fonterras, your McCain's, your DB's, and they all need a variety of skilled workers, from lab technicians to process workers, other businesses. We need teachers, we need nurses, we need doctors. It's right across the board. And, we're after people that are sitting there in Auckland, looking at having to save for about 15 or 20 years just to get a deposit, or sitting in traffic for, a couple of hundred hours a year. Thinking, geez, there's something better, and we've got it down our way. So they need to have a serious look at us.
And so you are targeting basically everyone, really? So there are jobs for everyone?
Oh, look, there are jobs across a variety of sectors. Obviously, the initial bit of the campaign is focusing on, those that are wanting to get onto the property ladder or a few rungs up the career ladder. But, they may be young people with families or those into their careers a number of years. So, the variety of roles, I suppose, but the variety of businesses, whilst it's a big strength of the region, our diversity of our industry sector, it's also our biggest challenge because those businesses across all those different sectors need a variety of roles, so a variety of people.
So, Nigel, you're whacking 2 billboards up in Auckland to show people what they can get in Timaru.
Yeah, look, exactly, and it's going to be supplemented by some Facebook, on our Facebook page today was the launch of the first video, which was a couple of young families that have shifted into Timaru talking about their experiences and saying that their families up north can't believe that the quality of the home that they can get, the bang for the buck. And it'll be supplemented as we go a bit further with us, further telling people what a great place this is and why they should seriously consider us.
I'm looking at one of the billboards and it says, "We love our first homes," and it's got on it $350,000 median house price. And then there is a picture of a gorgeous villa, with the classic villa with the bay window and the deck along the other side. Don't tell me you can get that for 350 grand, can you? Is that a $350,000 house?
I'll tell you what, John, you and your listeners need to jump on our Facebook page and have a look at the video, because the young couple that are in that house are showing us through it, and it is phenomenal. And that's a prime example of what you can get down our way. So, that 350K, that's probably about a third of the average Auckland house price, I would have thought.
Yeah, so you were selling the fact that there is work there and also the kind of simple things that people hope for, because most people, aren't after terribly much, but they'd love to own their own home, and they would love to not spend an absurd amount of time stuck in traffic. And the other point you're making is that the average commute time is 7 minutes, right? So they're really strong selling points. If those things are facts, and clearly they are. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to attract people? What is it about the pull of the big cities that makes it hard to get people to communities like Timaru, where there are jobs, where there are good, cheap homes, where there is a quality of life which is enviable?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's definitely enviable, and they definitely are facts. We wouldn't be putting them out there if they weren't. And look, I just think it's a case where people, they get into a certain lifestyle or a way of life, and they just, they can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. And our campaign is there to really, not too subtly open their eyes to some of the stuff. And it's things like, it's a great place to bring up a family. We're a fantastically safe community. We've got outstanding schools, great sporting facilities. We've got some outstanding residents that have lived in Timaru and gone on to bigger and better things like the Tom Walshes of this world, and Hayden Patton, he's from down our way as well.
Owen Marshall, the writer, he's Owen Marshall, he's a Timaru boy, isn't he?
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah, we've got the best hot cross buns in the country, voted this year as well. So it's all happening down our way.
Jordan Luck, was he from Timaru, the dance exponents?
Yeah, Jordan Luck's from the Timaru district. He was born out Geraldine way. Yep, most definitely.
Say no more. So, and I don't want to say that one of the great things about Timaru is that you can get away from it. But how far away is Christchurch? It's not much more than an hour's drive, is it?
Hey, settle down, John. Yeah, no, look, we're smack bang in the middle of both Christchurch and Dunedin. There are a couple of hours either side of us.
Oh, right, okay, sorry everyone. Yeah.
You're all right. We've got the best of natural NZ on the doorstep. And look, that hour surf to snow, we've got our central lakes up through, the Lake Tekapo's of this world, and a bit further on to Benmore and that as well. So, everything is there. I've got mates, they ring me up in the middle of winter, and they've been on the webcam for Mount Dobson and saying, hey, look, I want to be up there in an hour. Are you free? And unfortunately, I've got to work for a living, and they send me a pic in an hour's time, and you sort of go, wish I was there with you. So.
How is life in South Canterbury? What is the economy doing?
Oh, look, the economy is fair bubbling away. We don't, because of that diversity of our industry, we don't have the ups and downs of other areas in the country. The dairy payout dropped a bit a few years back, and, we didn't have the peak and trough, I suppose, of, people look at the GDP, and, we didn't have the peak and trough of other areas. So, life is excuse the term, but life is bloody good. And, we're saying, where would you want to be? Why would you want to be anywhere else? And it's not us, we're out there saying it, but we're using people that have shifted to Timaru recently or, a few years back, or have been here, a number of years. And they're the ones that are saying, well, hey, it's pretty good here.
Nigel Davenport, on behalf of Timaru. Let's go now to Aotearoa Square, not far away from us in central Auckland, where a rally against racism is taking place against the planned visit. Well, in fact, the visit's occurring of far-right duo Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux. A speaking event was supposed to take place tonight at Auckland's power station, but the venue was cancelled late this afternoon. Our reporter Annika Smith is at Aotearoa Square. Annika, hello. How many people are there?
Kia ora, John. There's about 300 people gathered in Aotea Square this evening. It started off a small crowd, but it's grown quite big over the last 20 or so minutes. At the moment, Marama Davidson, the Green Party MP, is actually speaking to the crowd, and they're very vocal. There's been a lot of cheers.
Yes, I can hear them in the background. Why is the event still happening? Why is the protest still happening when the event itself has been cancelled?
Yeah, I've spoken to quite a few people in the crowd asking why they're still here, sort of, I guess, making a point. And they said that the issue is not so much about about the speakers, it's more so racism itself, and they wanted to make a stand regardless of whether the event went ahead or not.
Annika Smith from Aotea Square, which I think probably as the crow flies is about 500 metres away from us here. Thank you, Annika. The Iwi Chairs Forum has taken a veiled swipe at the Crown over what it describes as a continued lack of progress on implementing Maori water rights and interests. The Environment Minister David Parker announced a new Maori Freshwater Forum, Te Kahui Maori Wai, would be set up at the Iwi Chairs Forum at Narawa Wahia today. But iwi leaders say they're yet to decide if this group will adequately uphold the Treaty of Waitangi. Te Manukorihi reporter John Boynton was in Narawa Wahia.
On the banks of the Waikato River and with mist peeling off the surrounding hills, Environment Minister David Parker made his announcement that there would be a new Māori Freshwater Forum. However, the announcement of the Te Kahui Wai Māori group took place behind the closed doors at the Waikato Tainui offices. David Parker said afterwards the new group will help to protect and restore freshwater resources.
Maori groups are also telling the government, and in order to resolve our problems relating to water quality and for us to get to an enduring settlement, we have to deal with Maori issues, and we're proposing to do this through Kahui Wai.
Water rights have been hotly contested across the country, and during the election campaign, Labour said it would work with iwi to resolve treaty water claims. But the party backed down after forming a coalition government with New Zealand First, which opposes Māori water rights. Ngāpuhi treaty negotiator Rudy Taylor says he sees similarities in the fight for Māori water rights and the foreshore and seabed controversy in 2004. David Parker doesn't share the same view.
He was saying that we were coming along here to announce the confiscation of Maori interests in water, which was not correct.
None of the iwi chairs would speak to the media today. But in a statement, the forum said iwi are committed to an agile process to address iwi and hapu rights and interest in fresh water. Pōtaiao Chair Herewini Parata said the forum is considering whether the new freshwater group will adequately support the Tiriti o Waitangi partnership with the Crown. And the forum confirmed its preference for a regionally focused catchment-based system. The Māori Development Minister Nanaia Mahuta grew up along the banks of the Waikato River.
I have fond memories of swimming in the river, playing with our mates and all of that, paddling on the river. So it's my aspiration to see the river cleaned up.
And Nanaia Mahuta sees the formation of the new group as moving the conversation around Māori water rights and interest forward.
The fundamental difference is that we are having a conversation at the front end of the government's thinking around how do we approach the issues of rights and interests from a different angle. For the last 9 years, the previous administration with the Iwi Leaders Forum have been going round and round in circle, and there's been no movements.
And the government's Provincial Growth Fund is expected to be used to develop Māori land and water interest.
The Provincial Growth Fund kind of links in there, but actually one of the biggest inhibitors of developing Māori land is the lack of access to water.
David Parker says Māori groups such as the Iwi Chairs Forum and the Māori Council will help to form the new forum, and a non-Māori freshwater forum will also be created. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko John Boynton aho.
I'll tell you what's happened. In the 5 minutes or so since Nigel Davenport was on talking about Timaru, we have been inundated with people sending us pictures of their favourite parts of Timaru, pictures of the homes you can get in Timaru, telling us stories about Timaru, praising Timaru. One miserable bugger pointing out that Timaru is a Crusaders town and Auckland is a blues town. You never kick someone when they're down, bro. But yeah, fair point. I'm sure the Blues will rise again from the ashes. in the same way that I will one day be an All Black. And also, lots of people are saying, go the supermarkets on the plastic bag front. Isn't it incredible that government, with the Green Party as part of it, is slower to legislate the removal of plastic bags than the supermarkets, but also a hell of a lot of you pointing out, yeah, but there's still a lot of things packed and unnecessary plastic in the supermarkets. Why is that, and when is that going to stop? I guess that's harder to control, right? That's the manufacturers, but a lot of you are saying, hey, this is really good window dressing, but there needs to be more done to reduce the amount of plastic in the shops when we go shopping. Great feedback coming in tonight. A couple of people telling us what we can do involving sex and travel, I think, to put it nicely. I don't think that's anatomically possible just quietly as a result of covering old Lauren and what's his name. Thank you for your suggestions, but I don't think we'll take you up on them. Bless you, but have a great weekend.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. An Australian soldier trapped on Mount Aspiring for 4 nights has finally been flown off and taken to hospital. A break in the weather late today allowed 2 helicopters to reach Terry Harch and the 4 rescuers who made it to him last night. He's now being treated at Dunedin Hospital for minor frostbite. A search and rescue spokesperson in Wanaka, Phil Melchior, says the final part of the operation was over in less than 10 minutes.
I would describe it as a very happy ending to a situation which could have been much worse than it was.
The Rescue Coordination Centre says the rescue operation has been a real test of everyone's ability. The far-right Canadian duo of Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux won't be making a public appearance in New Zealand. Their event planned for Auckland tonight was cancelled at the last minute and ticket holders will be getting a refund. The event organisers updated their website this afternoon to say that due to circumstances beyond their control, tonight's event is off. That announcement came not long after the owners of the venue where the event was due to be held, the power station, cancelled the booking. One of the venue's owners, Peter Campbell, says they acted because of the disruption the event would cause. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa says he was humbled to be elected and called for unity after a poll marred by the deaths of 6 people in an army crackdown on opposition protests. Mr Mnangagwa, a former spy chief installed after Robert Mugabe's removal in a coup in November, secured a comfortable victory over opposition leader Nelson Chamisa. The opposition Movement for Democratic Change Alliance says it rejects the outcome of the presidential election and will launch a legal challenge to overturn the result. A man has been jailed for more than 3 years for his part in the country's largest cocaine smuggling attempt. Henry Anchondo was sentenced in the High Court in Auckland today for helping import an ornamental diamante-encrusted horse's head from Mexico containing 35 kilograms of cocaine. The ornament was intercepted at Auckland International Airport, where the police placed tracking equipment inside and followed it to a house in Te Atatu and then on to an Auckland City hotel. 2 men who brought in the horse head were arrested at the time and later jailed for 19 and 17 years, but Anchondo went on the run for a year before he was arrested. Justice Lang says there were mitigating factors in the sentencing.
34 years of age, you have no previous convictions. Indeed, the present offending appears to have been an aberration from your normal conduct. I also accept that you are genuinely remorseful.
Justice Lang. The iwi Chairs Forum says iwi have already waited too long for the Crown to deal with Maori freshwater rights and interest. It comes after the Environment Minister, David Parker, announced a new Maori freshwater forum, Te Kahui Māori Wai, would be set up. Po Taiao Chief Hirawini Parata said the forum is considering whether the new freshwater group will adequately support the Te Reti o Waitangi partnership with the Crown. The forum said iwi are committed to an agile process to address iwi and hapu rights and interests in fresh water. David Parker announced the new forum would be set up today at the iwi Chairs Forum meeting at Ngā Reo Wāhia. Opportunities for small business have dominated talks between the New Zealand and Australian trade ministers in Auckland today. David Parker and his Australian counterpart, Stephen Chobo, reiterated the two nations' strong trading relationship, noting two-way trade in 2017 totalled nearly $30 billion and two-way investment reached $161.5 billion. The pair also spoke of their gratification at the progress made on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and shared an openness to other countries joining up. They also both want bilateral deals with the United Kingdom and discuss the potential opportunities and issues both economies might face in securing those deals following Brexit. US counterintelligence investigators are reported to have discovered a suspected Russian spy working undetected at the American embassy in Moscow. The Guardian newspaper says the woman had access to the security service's internal communication systems and came under suspicion 2 years ago. She was sacked last summer. The BBC's Peter Bowes reports from Los Angeles.
The Russian national is said by The Guardian to have had access to intranet and email systems, giving her a potential window into highly confidential material, including the schedules of the president and the vice president. A US government official has confirmed the woman was working for the Secret Service in Moscow. During a routine security review, it emerged that she was having regular and unauthorized meetings with members of Russia's Federal Security Service, the country's principal security agency.
Peter Bowes in Los Angeles. It's 6:05. Sport. The New Zealand golfer Lydia Ko is optimistic of finding her range with the putter as she tries to edge closer towards the lead at the British Open. Ko is 3 shots behind leader Minjee Lee of Australia in a tie for 8th, heading into tonight's second round at the Royal Lytham and St Anne's course in Lancashire, England. The two-time major winner says continuing to produce good approach shots will be important.
It gives you confidence, and I think more than that, I think it's just a good thing that I'm giving myself good looks at birdies, and especially at majors, having a 2-putt par isn't really the end of the world. So I think I just got to keep continuing to do that.
Lydia Ko tees off in round 2 just before 7 o'clock. New Zealand sailors are in for a challenging week at the World Championship in Denmark if the opening day was anything to go by. Wild swings and wind direction and strength made a farce of racing, with some teams protesting results. Andy Maloney made the best start of the Kiwis, finishing 6th in his fleet of the Finn class, and he says consistency will be key.
We waited around on the water for about 6 hours before getting a race away. It's a really tricky venue, so it's going to be a high-scoring regatta, I'm sure, and a 6 is a really good keeper, so I'm happy with it.
Andy Maloney. And the New Zealand women's softball team opened their World Championship campaign against Chinese Taipei tonight. Olympic Games qualifying berths are up for grabs at the tournament in Japan. That's the news.
Tomorrow on Saturday morning, Shakespeare and the Law with Nigel Pascoe QC, allergies with Professor Franca Roncasi just in time for spring, Lucy Saunders made healthy streets for London, any tips for New Zealand, and poet Holly McNish, Nobody Told Me is the name of her collection. It's about pregnancy and motherhood. It was a smash hit. Saturday morning with me, Noel McCarthy, in for Kim Hill on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Whanganui, also Coromandel and Taupo, long fine spells and isolated showers, high cloud increasing tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, rain with some heavy falls east of Whakatane, isolated showers elsewhere, but rain spreading throughout tomorrow afternoon. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, occasional rain with heavy falls about northern Gisborne. Taihape and Manawatu to Wellington, long fine spells with isolated showers clearing this evening, however, clouding over tomorrow with scattered rain developing. For Marlborough and Nelson, mainly fine but a few showers about Golden Bay, scattered rain developing later tomorrow in Marlborough. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine in Fiordland, showers about Buller and Westland clearing from the south tonight and becoming fine. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, areas of low cloud or fog with afternoon fine breaks inland. Patchy rain about eastern parts of Otago and Southland. We really wanted cold, nasty weather for the Super Rugby tomorrow night. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy with occasional rain.
Oh, your point being the South Africans can't handle it.
No.
I was at
and they're playing it,
I was at the Cape Town when the Hurricanes won their only title against the Lions, the same team.
Yep.
It was the most extraordinarily awful night in the history of Wellington. and it did us no harm at all. You're right.
No, it's perfect here.
Yeah.
Because we have to go over there and play in heat and
dry grounds.
Dry and up 6,000
that's
metres
right.
and things,
Although it could be the most beautiful day in the history of Christchurch, and the Crusaders are still going to smack the Lions.
Of course they are. We know that.
We know that, KB. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend, Katrina.
You too.
Thank you. This is a lovely story because I think lots of people didn't think it would end like this. The Australian soldier trapped high up on Mount Aspiring for 4 nights has finally been flown off the mountain and taken to hospital. A break in the weather in the past few hours has allowed 2 helicopters to reach Terry Harch and the 4 rescuers who made it to him last night. So they went in and spent the night with him. Choppers got them all out today. Conan Young reports on what we know so far about a pretty amazing tale of survival.
It was relief at last for rescuers as the weather cleared just enough this afternoon to allow Terry Harch to be flown off the mountain. He's now been treated at Dunedin Hospital for minor frostbite. A search and rescue spokesperson in Wanaka, Phil Melchior, says the final part of the operation was over in less than 10 minutes.
I would describe it as a very happy ending to a situation which could have been much worse than it was.
The 29-year-old Australian soldier set off his locator beacon at midday on Monday and then spent what must have been the loneliest and most emotionally draining 3 nights of his life, waiting in sub-zero conditions to see if anybody would come to his rescue. An older-style beacon, the signal was sent to its operator in, of all places, Texas, with the operator then making the call to authorities here to tell them somebody was in trouble. Low cloud and strong winds prevented rescuers from reaching him for 3 nights. Then, just as the sun was disappearing behind the horizon and Terry Harch was contemplating the thought of a 4th night alone on the mountain, the clouds cleared just enough to allow a chopper to land close to where the signal was coming from. The Wanaka Alpine Cliff Rescue Coordinator, Paul Rogers, says Mr Harch came out from his shelter and waved to the helicopter to let them know where he was.
It was way too windy to attempt to winch down the paramedic that was attached to the Southern Lakes helicopter. And also it was way too windy last night and with fading light to risk winching the patient off of the glacier. So the 4 rescuers preempted this and they were dropped off as close to the target area that we wanted to get to. And they went on skis. They toured in on skis, towing sleds and survival equipment to get to this guy.
Paul Rogers says Lieutenant Terry Harch, who is a serving Australian Army officer, is in good spirits and only needs treatment for moderate frostbite.
I've trained New Zealand soldiers and Australian soldiers for many years as an instructor, and they all know how to dig in when things don't go well. And this person's definitely found himself some shelter. And the best thing he could have done was stay out of the wind chill and the driving snow, which he would have been in for the last 4 days. And he did a great job.
The Rescue Coordination Centre's Neville Blakemore paid tribute to the helicopter pilot who managed to drop off Mr Harch's rescuers despite strong winds and fading light last night.
Yes, it's taken some extreme skill. We've got basically some of New Zealand's top helicopter operators driving these machines around for us. They don't take chances, but by the same token, that they're working in extremely harsh conditions, and it's you've got to have all your wits about you to get the machines into there. So yes, to get that machine up there last night certainly took an extreme amount of good flying.
Neville Blakemore says the rescue operation has been a real test of everybody's abilities. For Checkpoint, ko Conan Young tēnei.
And in Australia, one group is really pleased about the news of Terry Harch's rescue. Well, lots of groups, but this one, well, Mr Harch summited Aoraki Mount Cook in 2014 with 4 other servicemen to raise money for the Australian charity Soldier On. And its Deputy CEO, Matt Jones, says they've been extremely anxious the last few days, but he does credit Terry's army training for saving his life.
He's been a strong supporter of ours in the past. In 2014, him and a few mates climbed Mount Cook and summited, and they raised some much-needed funds for Soldier On, which is an organisation that looks after the veterans community. So the organisation as a whole have been sitting on their edge of their seats and waiting for this great news. And we were really excited this morning to hear that he's been rescued, and then I only heard about an hour ago that he's now off the mountain. So it's a very good day for Soldier On, and I'm sure an even better day for Terry and his friends and his family.
Just give me a sense of what kind of a bloke Terry is.
Terry, I think, is one of these typical Aussie adventurers. He's just got that adventurous streak about him, getting out into the world and doing things that mere mortals like me would never even consider. As an Army officer, I think that adds an extra layer, and I'm really thankful that his Army training has paid off in this sense, and that he was able to survive what I'm sure would have been a very gruelling few days for him on the mountain.
He is off the mountain and in hospital, and reports say that he's doing really well. It was Matt Jones talking to our producer, Bridget Burke. The man who went on the run for a year after a botched cocaine deal involving the Class A drug being hidden in a diamante-encrusted horse head has been jailed. Henry Anchondo was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months in prison when he appeared at the High Court in Auckland today. Eva Corlett was there.
Anchondo, who was travelling on a US passport, was involved in the largest ever importation of cocaine into New Zealand. The details of the drug bust read like an action film. A large crate from Mexico was intercepted at the Auckland International Airport in May 2016. Justice Lang described what customs officers found.
When the authorities opened the crate, they found it contained a large shrink-wrapped metal horsehead statue. This was found to weigh approximately 336 kilograms. Concealed within the statue were 35 1-kilogram bricks of cocaine. These were removed and replaced with 35 1-kilogram bricks containing a placebo substance. Approximately 6 grams of cocaine, together with a tracking device, were left concealed inside one of the bricks.
Using the tracking equipment inside the head, police followed it to a storage unit in Onehunga, then watched it move to a house in Te Atatu. Two suppliers, Mexican national Augustin Suarez Juarez and US national Ronald Cook Sr., met with Anchondo to complete the deal at Auckland's Swish Crown Plaza Hotel in July 2016. When they discovered the tracking device, all three left the hotel. Suarez Juarez and Cook were arrested trying to leave the country the same day and were jailed for 19 and 17 years respectively last August. Anchondo went on the run for a year before police caught up with him in Whangarei last September. Justice Lang said Anchondo was a link in a chain designed to separate the vendor from the buyer.
I view you as having the role of a custodian courier. It is clear that you had no role in the importation of the cocaine, and you were not in any way involved in the planning of that process.
Anchondo faced a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Justice Lang took a starting point of 5 years and 6 months. That was then decreased due to some mitigating factors.
34 years of age, you have no previous convictions. Indeed, the prison offending appears to have been an aberration from your normal conduct. I also accept that you are genuinely remorseful and that you will find it difficult to serve your sentence in prison far away from your family.
Because Anchondo pleaded guilty to the charges, 25% was taken off his sentence to arrive at 3 years and 8 months. I tāmaki makoro mō te hōtaka o te ahia hinei, ko Eva Corlett tēnei.
A power outage has affected thousands of Wellingtonians this afternoon. Wellington Electricity says the outage in the central city and western suburbs is the result of a fault with Transpower's supply to the local network. The power went out around 12:30 to more than 12,000 customers. It was restored just after 3:15. Wellington-based reporter Charlie Drever spoke to some of those affected.
Customers at the Wilton Countdown were met with a darkened store this afternoon due to this afternoon's power outage. One shopper, Kate Lancaster, says she didn't know about the power cut until she arrived.
They've got covers down over the refrigerators to preserve the coldness, and they just had to lift up the curtain for us so that we could see the food underneath.
Further down the road in Courier, Tara Woodard Layman says she was at home in the middle of a conference call when the electricity went out.
I was in the middle of an interview and on my computer and everything shut down.
What, like a job interview?
Yes, for a job. and everything went dark and my computer and the Wi-Fi went off, so the call was interrupted. So it was really bad timing for me.
Tara Woodard Layman had sought refuge at the Courier Library because her security alarm kept beeping due to the cut. Simon Bartlett, who manages Brendan Motors on Courier Road, says the outage will affect business.
Well, we can't operate a hoist because we've got safety mechanisms with them, so they can't lower if there's no power. But we're lucky to have the customers' cars that needed to go out early. We're already on the ground. Yeah, it just means we've got no power tools in, so it's back to the ways we used to do it. I guess 30 years ago, it's a good experience for the apprentice.
In the central city, Maria, who works in a cafe at the bottom of the terrace, had a busy afternoon planned.
We don't have any power left, and as we have a lot of food in the chiller, we need to now transfer everything to other stores, otherwise it's going to go bad.
Meanwhile, Ricky Kahukiwa cut his gym session short.
At City Fitness, the bit up the top's where all the machines are, and then I had a look down the bottom, and all the treadmills have stopped working.
So what are you trying to do now? You're trying to get home?
Yeah, I'm going home, packing up. Can't really do anything else for the day.
Chief Executive of Transpower, Alison Andrew, says the outage was caused by a fault in a piece of equipment.
We've worked out that there was a section that joined two parts of the supply into Wilton that had a fault. So at about 1:30 we got crews up to Wilton who identified the fault, and it was about parts that connect two sections of the power system. And as a consequence of the way we've designed it, the protection mechanism kicked in to ensure the network wasn't damaged.
Alison Andrew says they managed to restore power around 2:30, but then it's up to Wellington Electricity to make the connections. She apologises to customers who have been inconvenienced. But for many Wellingtonians, it's at least an excuse to start the weekend early. For Checkpoint, Charlie Drever.
Some fantastic feedback coming in. Some nights you're all happy and at peace with the world. Some nights you're and tonight you're just all slightly nutty. Well, not all of you. Some of you are sane and rational, as RNZ's audience always is, but there's some beautifully mad feedback coming in. I really like this one. This from Simon Johnson in Wellington. That's wonderful that an Aussie climber Terry Hatch has been rescued. To celebrate, we now incarcerate him for 6 months on the Chatham Islands, then deport him to Malcolm Turnbull with a bill for his rescue. Yes, touche, Simon. Yeah. Right. Thank you. 6:21. We turn now to a New Zealand business success story that's really taking off. It's called Allbirds. And for the uninitiated, it's a shoe company which numbers amongst its investors Leonardo DiCaprio. The company was the brainchild of Tim Brown, a former All-White, who'd spent an awful lot of time in football boots and became moderately obsessed with how loud and artificial they all were and how often they needed to be replaced. His objections to the boots turned into wondering, and he came up with the idea of a shoe made of merino wool. It sounds fanciful, but it's gone off, and the latest Allbirds triumph is Sweet Foam, a carbon-negative green ethylene vinyl acetate made from sugarcane. All of this Tim Brown told me from realising he really didn't like his football gear, and a dream he backed with his own money.
Initially, it was all out of my savings for the first few years, and with some help from a little bit of help from some family and friends, and then it kind of there was a Kickstarter campaign that I launched in 2015 to sort of test the idea, and that was really validating, and that gave us a little bit of capital, and then when I got together with Joey, my co-founder, we'd done a lot of the work. It'd been years at that point. And we decided to raise some money, and we raised a couple of $1 million of seed money initially here in the Bay Area, set up the business, moved from London where I was living, and decided to go after it. And that's been really, really helpful in getting us off the ground.
And what's your revenue now? How many pairs are you selling?
We haven't told anyone about that. We just kind of kept our head down and not talked about any of that stuff. But we did disclose, probably just coming up to our second anniversary, just prior to releasing our second material innovation in the eucalyptus fibre, and we disclosed that we'd sold 1 million pairs of shoes made out of New Zealand wool, which was a pretty cool moment and a moment to celebrate, and that had happened pretty quickly, and sort of was a moment where we I think we disclosed a little bit of some of the success that we were lucky enough to have.
So you're north of 1 million, well north of 1 million now, I suspect.
Yeah, there's been more since then, and look, it's going well. We've got the foundation, I think, of a really meaningful business in an enormous category, and this was a big moment yesterday for us, John, bringing out this material. It's been about 3 years in the making. We partnered with a Brazilian multinational green energy company to basically, they invested some money to reconnect some pipes, and we worked out a way to bring this natural material, sugarcane, and make what at least initially was a carbon negative version of this common material, and we're using it in our products, but we've also made it we're making it available to the larger footwear industry with a view that this problem of sustainable manufacturing is not going to be solved just by us, and so that's been a cool part of the story too.
Yeah, it's a really good story on all levels, and I think the footwear industry needed a radical reinvention and was forced to confront its own practices. For many of us, the first we heard about it was Naomi Klein and No Logo, right, which must be 20 years old now.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're sustainable across the board. And when Leonardo DiCaprio announced he was investing in you, and he tweeted, proud to be an investor in Allbirds, a company dedicated to creating a more sustainable future by developing new materials and serving as a model for the footwear industry, he also meant a model for the footwear industry in terms of your relationship with the people making the shoes, right?
Yeah, look, I think so. That was a really special moment to have a guy like that sort of say, hey, directionally, these guys are trying to do the right thing. I just want to kind of make the point, we've got a long way to go. We're 3 years old. The topic of truly making things sustainably is incredibly complicated, and we certainly don't have all the answers, but what we do have is a commitment to try very hard, and I think we've started to get some success. I think, the fashion industry broadly, if you zoom back out, John, has got a problem. Outside of the fossil fuel industry, it's the largest contributor of carbon emissions. And quite frankly, we should be able to put a man on the moon. We should be able to make a T-shirt and a pair of shoes more sustainably. And there's a real problem to be solved there. And, we sort of are of the opinion that small businesses like ours can move faster, can make things like sustainability and non-negotiable, and with different types of business models, they can truly make a bit of an impact, and that's what we've tried to do.
Have you seen the Prime Minister being interviewed on Checkpoint yesterday?
I missed it.
No, that's all right. You're in San Francisco. In fact, you were travelling. But the point of this was that wasn't a vanity question. It was simply that she was wearing a pair of your shoes.
Well, that's very cool. I have to say, I got a call from my mum and dad, who lived just north of Wellington, when she gifted the Australian Prime Minister a pair of Allbirds.
Yeah, Malcolm Turnbull, yeah.
It was one of those ones that sort of, all of a sudden our brand's bringing nations together. It was a good moment, John. International diplomacy. But it's special, and, it's very, very cool. And, it's been her, it's been DiCaprio, it's been, a bunch of people have organically found this story and connected with it, and that's been beyond the wildest dreams. So it's been cool to see.
Yeah, I bet it has. I wonder if the most sincere form of flattery is when you're just walking along the street and you see people in your shoes. Has that happened yet? Just total strangers wearing your footwear?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And I'm always asking how it's going, and
you stop them. Look, you accost them in the street, do you?
For a long time. This was a bad idea for a long time, John, in the early days, long before it was a good one. And probably sort of circa 2009 when we started trying to work on this, and hundreds of prototypes to arrive at this idea of a shoe made out of a material that had never really been involved in footwear before. So this has been a surprise to me just as much as anyone else, but it's certainly been cool to see.
And so, Tim, when you see someone in the street and you stop them and you introduce yourself and say, I'm the owner of the company and those shoes were my idea, well, what do they say back to you?
I normally don't do that. I normally just say, how are those going? Are they good? Are they comfortable? What could be better? It's amazing what you'll learn when you ask people like that. And for the most part, it's this simple idea that actually, comfort is the number one reason why people buy shoes. And we've tried to sort of solve this with materials that are not just better for the environment, but make better products. So kind of a really simple idea in a way. And the people doing all the hard work are the merino farmers down in the South Island. So, what's been cool, I think, as a Kiwi is to sort of see this material having a complete renaissance. And I don't think there's been too many young Kiwis at the moment growing up dreaming to be a merino farmer or a sheep farmer. And I think that's about to change. I feel like this material is starting to have a real moment, certainly in the States. So it's very, very exciting.
Tim Brown, who was the founder, as you heard, of Allbirds, with his own money, the dream he was standing in. I have to say, I look at the rugby boots my son wears, and they're appalling things. Gauche, they stink. They don't seem to be made of any discernible material. They're overpriced. We know that the people who made them probably aren't earning very much. And the fact that he looked down at the boots he was wearing when he was playing for the All Whites and thought, I can do better than this, and has in fact done so, is a pretty wonderful story. Lots of people texting in their stories about Allbirds. I promise you, my Allbirds are so well loved, so manky, been washed so many times you don't want to see them, but the best bit is the sense of awesome superiority I feel walking, allbirding through airports and cities around the world, shod in a bit of good old New Zealand tech, past all the sheep ha-ha in their Nikes. Awesome, says this text. Thank you. Lots of really lovely texts about Allbirds and Timaru tonight. Lots of you are saying, yep, we like Timaru. We've moved here for various reasons and we're very, very happy to be here, and lots of you now contemplating the idea that you might move to Timaru. We had Nigel Davenport from the Aoraki Development Centre speaking on behalf of Timaru and reminding us you could get a house for 350 grand there, a rather lovely villa. Checkpoint is made by Pip King, Catherine Warbridge, Bridget Burke, Zach Fleming, Nick Monroe, Leilani Mamoisia has been doing digital editing tonight. Michelle Cook is normally our digital editor. Kelvin Samuel and Jeremy Veal are on the controls. In the control, let's have a wave. There's everyone there, winding up for a Friday night. It is a team effort. They are the permanent staff members. It's a production of RNZ News. We're proud of the work we do, and we're delighted and grateful for your company. Have a wonderful weekend. See you Monday.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Australian soldier trapped on Mount Aspiring for 4 nights has finally been flown off the mountain and taken to hospital. Transpower is blaming faulty equipment for this afternoon's power outage in Wellington that blacked out 12,000 homes and businesses. The opposition movement for Democratic Change Alliance in Zimbabwe says it rejects the outcome of the presidential election and will launch a legal challenge to overturn the result. And Europe's current heatwave could break record temperatures in the next few days, with a surge of hot air sweeping in from Africa. Our next news and weather is at 7.
On Country Life this week, Sue Higgins from Rural Woman New Zealand wants farming to have a higher profile in schools.
The opportunities are there for our talented people to come in and make their mark. I really think technology is going to be the driver of our future, and education is the key.